Hello, career competitor. This is Steve Meller, as always, here to share with you some powerful conversation and some significant insights into what it means to optimize your career in pursuit of your optimal self. I am excited to be introducing our guest here shortly. But as always, let me draw your attention to careercompetitor.com, where you'll see right at the top of that homepage is a place where you can enter your email and become a part of my monthly subscription, my mid-monthly message, where I am just simply giving you that little nudge in the middle of the month to remember that whatever it was you set out to achieve with all that energy at the outset of the month and whatever those lofty goals may be at the end of the month, that you're not going to lose sight of that journey in between. Become a part of my community today. Head to careercompetitor.com, enter your email, and look forward to my next mid-monthly message. Now, let's get right into the show. Hello there, and welcome in to this episode of Career Competitor with my guest, Antonio Vaglica. And Antonio will get the introduction he certainly deserves here in just one moment, but this former baseball player is going to be hitting a number of great insights throughout the course of this interview. And three things to certainly look out for here is, firstly, the cumulative impact that comes from making small, consistent hits throughout your life. Secondly, we discuss why our to-do list should be built upon intention and fulfillment. And finally, Antonio covers how our greatest mistakes are the deposits that we need to track what not to do. So these three things and much more within my discussion with Antonio Vaglica on this episode of Career Competitor, and I hope you all enjoyed. Okay, our career competitor today is on a mission to show the world how small, consistent habits compound into long-term success. Having been a highly competitive baseball player all the way through college, our guest is a tried and tested example of what the foundation of this podcast was built off. A former athlete who's utilized the very characteristics that made them great at their game to become a success within their career. As of today, our guest owns two businesses that allow him to make an impact in people's lives on a daily basis. One business, which is a consulting firm that works with growth-oriented entrepreneurs. A lot of our listeners will tick that box to help maximize their enterprise value. And another called Consistency Wins, a community for high achievers that may not have the support system they need on this lonely path of entrepreneurship. I'm delighted, though, to be welcomed into Career Competitor, Mr. Antonio Vaglica. Antonio, how are we doing?
I'm amazing. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's been.
Oh man, you're good, and it's all your work. It's all you're doing. I'm just repeating what you have already done, and so it's if it sounded great, it's because you've done a lot of great things. And so I just excited to have you on, brother. And this is a conversation I know that, as I alluded to there in the intro, it speaks to what I love about this podcast, arguably more than anything. Lots of things I love about the show, so many things about our different diverse guests that bring to the show, but a former athlete who's paved his own path in so many different ways. You've had some ups, you've had some downs, and I know we're going to get through all of that today with so much great insight along the way. But tell us more, Antonio, about what you're doing right now. Tell us about those two businesses. Tell us about that typical day, so to speak, in the life of Antonio right now.
Sure. So we've actually added on a couple more since then.
All right.
So it's to hear you say that and to like look back on how short 5 years has been to build all of it. It's been a testament to simply just consistency and just monotony in the right direction and having fun along the way. And so just constantly hitting those singles. If I could use baseball terms for a second, it's like I was so accustomed to just trying to swing for the fences when I transitioned from baseball to entrepreneurship. And as anyone knows, the more you try and hit home runs in baseball, the more you end up striking out significantly more. You might hit those home runs here and there. So if you could commit to those small, consistent wins every single day in those micro directions, over time, it's like that bamboo tree effect where all this amazing abundance comes out on the other end. So for me, I would say my entrepreneurship journey started 20 years ago when I decided to just play baseball. And that's I'm 27 now, so I didn't actually start a business when I was 7 years old. But sports and entrepreneurship are one and the same. It's relatively the same thing. Being an athlete is a cheat code when it comes to entrepreneurship because of the amount of trials and tribulations and failure, the amount of coaching you get along the way, the team aspect of it all. So for me, everything in my life revolved around baseball until it all came down to an end pretty abruptly when I was 22 years old in college, and I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life at all. Like it was plan A, B, and C, and I was, just that was it. And so with that, when it ended all abruptly, instead of continuing to push through adversity, I didn't have a foundation on how to actually handle adversity other than you strike out or you ground out sometimes. But in the context of baseball, I was, a high performer in that world. So I wasn't used to massive failure on a grand level. And so I resorted to drugs, alcohol, bad relationships, not sleeping, video games, etc., just not doing what I needed to do to be making the impact that I wanted to make in my life. And something hit me after 6 to 8 months of just debauchery for all intents and purposes,
right,
where I think it was God speaking to me and letting me know, like, hey, you thought baseball was the destination and the goal, but really impact on a massive scale and changing people's lives and allowing them to unlock their massive potential in life is the goal. Baseball was just the vehicle for that season that he allowed me to be in. And now entrepreneurship is that new vehicle. And so leveraging things like sales, podcasting, entrepreneurship, etc., to be able to express that to the outside world and show them that anything is possible if you just put your mind to it. That is, my passion today. But to answer your question directly on what does a day-to-day look like, I try and reverse engineer my life around what actually gives me passion and what actually sparks me out. The beautiful thing about entrepreneurship is that you build, if you do it right, you can build your business around your life, not your life around your business. Where I've gone wrong significant amount of times is basically putting in life after all the business stuff. In my recommendation, once you're building out your calendar, build in the things that you want to do first and then build out your schedule around it so that you can fill your cup up. Because ultimately we're doing all of this so that we can serve what we actually want to do with our lives. And so I've dialed it down to a system where it comes down to every day on the micro habits of what am I doing for my body? So always making sure I'm exercising, minimum once a day, whether it's actually going to the gym or going for a walk, etc., my mental health, all that stuff. So that's for my body. I call the system BUILD. So BUILD. So B is for body. U is for you. What is it that I actually wanted to do today? So for example, after this stretch of podcasts that we have today, I'm going to go golfing. That's what I really wanted to do today. So I'm going to go golfing and I'm not going to be apologetic about it. I is for income. What are the major KPIs and metrics that I have to hit to, increase my business revenue and my take-home income at the end of the day? Are we having the sales calls? Are we getting enough referrals? Are we, doing the right marketing activity, et cetera? L stands for love or relationships. How am I continuing to deepen the relationships that I have? Because ultimately that's, what matters in my life. And then D is for development. What am I focused on the personal development side? Am I reading? Am I, listening to the right things? What are my inputs so that I can ultimately have better outputs? So that's kind of the system.
I love it. And, you took us through that journey there briefly, just of how you've come to where you are today. And the term you use there in the vehicle, I think it's a powerful metaphor for anybody listening, because I think immediately anyone listening says, okay, I can immediately now go to these parts of my life and say, hey, when was this a vehicle for me? When was this a vehicle for me? Or what was the vehicle during that time that allowed me to do X, Y, and Z in my particular world? And I'm curious, when you look, let's say, at that first primary vehicle, the one that's, the majority of your life up to this point was in motion, was baseball. And so when you think about what you just presented there too as with Build, I'm curious, how much did baseball and your experience there either help support the creation of Build, or in some ways was it possibly even resistant to the ability to create Build? I'm just curious because it does seem to be an interesting scenario there in terms of how that could have been of influence.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I would answer that question in twofold. It was a double-edged sword. So with baseball, what I did a great job of was manifesting and just claiming that I am an elite athlete. That was what I manifested when I was playing. I was I am an elite athlete. And what do elite athletes do? My subconscious started to just think about what are the actions that elite athletes, do. that ended result in me, like, I only trained with like professional baseball players. I had, any bit of money I made, I went broke investing in the best, highest quality training, etc. I was paying, in college, $200 a session just to train with MLB oriented trainers, etc. And so that prepared me to understand what it takes to get to the next level. But on the other side of it, build came from all the stuff that I didn't do properly. I didn't invest in the micro habits. I didn't understand that, you can only get away for so long with talent alone. And the elite players in every single industry, in sports and business, et cetera, they get that 1% better in those little extra directions. And what I've observed now, looking back on it, was I was content enough with being really good, not elite, and that ultimately put me in a position where I'm not playing anymore. But I'm hell bent on making sure that never happens again, and that chip on my shoulder is healthy at this point in my life.
Yeah, micro habits. I figured we would get to it, even just with that. The way in which I was introducing you there earlier, this notion of how do you help clients and how do you obviously be the epitome of that for clients when it comes to creating those micro habits. So I'd love to start with just even that initial awareness. There you were at that point in your life, that 6 to 8 month period that you alluded to, that life was not good. I've had a similar stretch myself, and I know how important, how powerful even some of the teeniest, tiniest things can do just to create some of that initial traction, which can then turn into the momentum that we need for these habits, obviously, to slowly compile. So I'm just curious, what might someone who's listening to this need to do or become aware of in order to say, hey, now could be a good time for me to start investing in a few new micro habits to get me from where I am to maybe where it is I want to be?
Sure. Step one is don't overcommit. At least in my opinion, don't try and, Rome wasn't built in a day. Don't try and hit the home run every single time. The system that I started to create through failure, which I hope you don't have to go through as much as I did in that learning curve, is what is this overarching large goal that you're trying to hit and large vision that you have? And how can I continue to reverse engineer down to what can I do in this exact minute or this exact day to get 1% better? I parlayed 2 specific books. I claim myself to just, I have some original IP, but I'm a really good copycat when it comes to identifying the principles of some people that are great and just putting my own spin on it. I parlayed Atomic Habits and The Compound Effect. Those 2 books really helped me create this engine of consistency. And it all sparked from lack of consistency, specifically on my health. I think your body and your health is the epitome of kind of where everything else translates to. When your health is not in alignment with where you need it to be, it's nothing else really takes care of itself, because ultimately, that's the engine that drives your energy. And so with that, I could not get consistent in the gym 5-6 years ago. And it was because every time that I, would go, I would try and put so much output, like I was training, back in the baseball days, and I would get so sore that I wouldn't be able to do it for a 3-month stretch, etc. And so I committed to let me not try and have a 6-pack today. Let me simply just go walk around the block and show up. And then I created the mechanism just showing up. And that translated to, jogging around the block, then running miles. And then eventually I started running marathons and triathlons and, powerlifting, etc. But you have to see the vision and understand that you're likely still going to be alive 5, 10, 15 years from now. So let's create a lifestyle practice around it so I can have longevity instead of just trying to win today every single time. And my ego needs those small single wins on the micro scale. So if I can find a way to feed that healthily by taking really solid micro habits and positive steps in the right direction, that's how I've at least been able to do it from my experience.
I love that you've given us that one main one, because I think what's so important here, that final point I want to touch on first, is the notion of the ego. And the ego, people would hear that and assume hey, I want the big goal. I want the big success. I want to be able to attach my name to, like you said, even jokingly, that's that 6-pack or that ability to complete an Ironman or something absolutely outrageous like that from a physical output. Or we can fuel our ego from just compound habits, consistent success, little wins day in, day out, just to remind us that while the result is something that we eventually may want to see many years down the road, and for some people that might just be good health and nothing more than that, and nobody gets to see the results of that aside from that one person looking in the mirror every day. But the fact of the matter is, you're making that argument here that one's ego can be fueled by just simply reinforcing small habits daily in a way where you just recognize the investment that you're putting into yourself and your well-being, if I'm hearing that right.
Yeah, no, really well said. And I think it's the healthiest way of serving the ego, because once you dial it down to a system and just execute every single day, it's guaranteed to happen. Like the universe, the law of the universe tells you that it's automatically going to happen if you claim it, you accept it, then you actually do the work that it takes on a consistent basis to get there. So, I've just heard from enough people that are successful that that's what they've done. I was just like, all right, well, let me not try and reinvent the wheel here, and let me just go do what they did. And then along the way, I'll, put my own spin on it as I get more skillful. And Andy Frisella said it one time on his podcast that happiness equals self-confidence. And self-confidence just comes from doing the hard shit every single day. Excuse my language. But that allows me to reinforce to my subconscious that I actually am who I say I am, and just continue to provide that evidence to your subconscious. That's really what I've been doing for 5 years. And unfortunately, it doesn't happen overnight. But as you start to consistently find ways to win, you're going to start seeing, the reason why I like it in fitness so much is because if you're out of shape, you're going to start seeing yourself get in shape pretty quickly over the course of, 2 to 4 weeks of consistency. And so I love seeing results in those tangible areas because it keeps you going.
Absolutely. I am who I say I am. I want people to really hear that part of what you just shared, that importance of being able to create a body of work and a body of evidence over time to reinforce to you and only you that whoever this person is that you continue to strive to be or show up as and claim to be, that you're actually backing it up, that you're actually doing it, because that self-confidence insight, like that is where that to the point of the quote, like that self-confidence only comes from the self. If you're looking for that self-confidence to somehow be reaffirmed from anything and everything going on around you, you might be left waiting a little long. The importance and the impact, so to speak, of how you can actually just build that self-confidence by seeing yourself show up and be who you claim to be day in, day out. That can be so impactful. And I want to just almost transition smoothly here into where the passion for seeing this in others came from, because we're the same in that regard. We both do some similar work in the sense of helping people move from wherever they are to wherever they want to be, whatever industry we may be operating in. But the fact is, you and I get a kick out of seeing other people do all these things that you and I emphasize and commit to doing to ourselves. So when did you realize, man, that, hey, this was something that I not only wanted to invest in myself, but I'm really excited about seeing the results of it in others too?
Yeah, great question. I just look back and I realized like my 22-year-old self needed me so bad. And so that's what keeps me going on pushing, so that I can translate that and allow people to not have to pay the learning tax that I had to pay by massive trials and tribulations. And everyone has their own proverbial rock bottom. Like I was never homeless or lived out of my car, et cetera. So, I know it's all relative, but rock bottom's rock bottom, because things are not good or bad. It's really how you interpret them. So like, to me, my rock bottom was like, it was terrible to me. And so with that, I started to realize that as I started posting all of this content on social media of what I was doing, one, it kept me accountable, because now I'm like releasing it out there, and you bet your ass I'm going to show up if I tell everyone I'm going to show up, because my ego definitely doesn't need that by reinforcing the bad habit. But then two, I started to get really positive feedback from it. Like, hey man, like, and I didn't realize this, but I was truly changing people's lives by just providing evidence to myself that I was the person that followed through on their word, and it held other people accountable subconsciously. And so with that, I realized that it wasn't for my benefit. Like it didn't make me feel good about myself, which it did, but that wasn't the number one driver when I would get that positive feedback. It just made me feel good that they were feeling good. And I started to realize that this isn't about me. I have to make it about me selfishly so that I can be the best for others. But ultimately, it's about how do I can serve others on a macro scale. So I consider it like Matthew McConaughey says this, an egotistical utilitarian. So I am going to be selfishly selfless so I can be the best that I can, fill up my cup and pour it into the greater good.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And providing the evidence of your own individual work, we're touching on this self-leadership concept now. And it's something we touched on earlier this year, actually, with one of our guests, John Kidwell, who's very much a specialist in this area. But the fact is that selfishness, as you touched on there, it it gives us a return. It gives us a return. And that's hard for some people to understand sometimes. It's like, hang on, so I'm prioritizing myself, and the result of that is other people are actually getting a kick out of, and some inspiration and some motivation themselves out of seeing me invest in me. But it turns out that energy that they're getting from me is being returned back to me as well. It's this complete magnet, if you will. Like, it goes out and then it comes straight back. And this notion of, hey, wow, if I were to keep doing this over and over and over again, how many more people can I actually start to help see the power of this individual work that I'm doing in myself? But in addition to that, what's going to happen when more and more people start to feel this and then return that same energy back to me? You're just going to continue to feel more and more, to use your word, that element of accountability. And I think that's a really important piece here that people need to understand, that as much as this is a commitment and a motivation tactic, it's also an accountability tactic, right?
Sure. And what's the alternative? Like staying the same or going through the pain of getting better. And you put it so well, and it's so prevalent to the book that I'm reading now called Happy Pocket Full of Money. And it talks about the quantum physics side of it, of how energy reciprocates and how it all comes back. So it's actually like scientifically the law of the universe and how God created this whole thing is that, we are actually one. And it sounds all woo-woo and abstract, but we are one. So all our job is continuously expand our consciousness so that the greater amount of people can actually truly understand that. Or else if you don't, you're just going to be focused on yourself and play this victim mentality. And so the most selfless thing to do is to actually focus on yourself, because that starts to translate to others, as Coach Steve was saying, is like it inspires others to be, their better version of themselves. And it creates this massive spiderweb effect of just everyone focusing on how can I be the best for myself to show up for other people. And I think that's the change that the world needs to see.
No doubt. I actually got an insight from a listener just yesterday as we were recording this, that the podcast has taken this really organic shift with our guests in the last 6 to 12 months of the consistent message of looking at the person in the mirror and really getting clear on how you're pouring into that person before you get too caught up in all those lofty goals and all those things outside of yourself. And that's what's been really interesting, man, with this show period over the last 6 years is, funnily enough, we're recording on the sixth birthday of this podcast right now. June 14th, 2018 was when this started. And I look at the growth of the show, and what's been most interesting is while we started with this competitive dynamic, and it was very competitive at first, like how do you win? How do you win? How do you win? And now we've shifted into this, success, winning, all these things that you can attain. If you're patient enough about those things, the universe is actually just going to bring those things to you. It's going to bring those things to you when you take care of this, when you take care of that person looking in the mirror, and when you prioritize that version of you, all these amazing things just kind of gravitate towards you, because to your point, you start sending this energy out to the universe and those around you closest to you, where you just get to continually feel fueled. You get continually feel motivated. You get to continually feel accountable to these people, but also most importantly to yourself as well. And we could stay on this point probably for the rest of the show, but I do want to get to some of the detail of what you're doing today, because I think this is where your world and my world, as we found out when I came on your podcast, that there's a lot of synergy there in terms of the similar things that we do. So I'm just curious about what might be some of the things that your current client base are maybe experiencing when they first come to you? And I know that can sometimes be a hard question to pinpoint one or two things, but what might be one or two things that they're dealing with where you feel as though, hey, we're able to provide this to them to really get them going with whatever this issue might be? Sure.
So our primary business is a consulting platform that operates as what I like to call a fractional family office. So people that have a massive amounts of net worth end up building their own family office, which is like in-house legal, accounting, tax work, financial advisory, etc. But what about the people that have really solid growing businesses but aren't worth $100 million yet? They still need an ecosystem of professionals that are in alignment for their benefit, not the professional's benefit. And I've just seen it happen time and time again. I'm writing a book currently about it, about how business owners can start to mitigate the stupid tax that I say they pay by having mediocre professionals in their corner. Imagine a world where people, their only job is to be a service provider to you and give you unbiased opinions in every single area of your life that you're not an expert at, which allows you to just continue growing your business and having the freedom that you want. That's kind of what we do as a business. So we launched this consulting platform after being in the traditional financial advisory space for about 5 years, sold off that practice because I hated the concept of always having to sell a product to get paid, because ultimately that brings in bias. And what entrepreneurs need is advice for the advice sake only. And they need an ecosystem of solutions that helps benefit them in a positive direction. A couple of main pain points our clients are experiencing when they first come to us. A huge one is taxes. No matter how little taxes you pay, everyone feels like they pay too much. And so with that, the way that I think about taxes is legally, the less I can pay the government, the quicker I can grow my business. The quicker I can take the government out as my silent partner, because they're ultimately the biggest business partner you have for the majority of your life as an entrepreneur, the more I can make an impact in people's lives, the more I can, enjoy my family, et cetera. Because ultimately, we're using entrepreneurship as a freedom engine. So how do I speed up that freedom if I don't have to pay a 40% rebate back to the government every year? Right. And so with that, we are not CPAs, just disclaimer there, but we're basically filling in the gaps where most CPAs are dropping the ball, which is on the strategy side. How often are you talking to your CPA as a business owner on how to actually mitigate your tax bill, other than like, hey, you owe this amount in taxes for your quarterlies or this year, maybe put some money in a retirement account, et cetera. And how do we get creative around the money we're already spending, using leverage, using tax advantageous asset classes, et cetera, that ultimately serve the vision of where we're trying to go? And then clients are always looking at us to scale, because we serve what we like to call stage 2 growth-oriented entrepreneurs. And so, they're out of this starvation mode when you first start a business where like, where's my next client coming from, et cetera. There's a little bit more stabilization, but you can rather make a decision on staying small and profitable or growing to the next level, because if you stay the same in that stage 2, you basically die out because no one wants to serve you. It's tougher to get loans, et cetera. So you have to make a decision, and our clients make the decision to grow. And so we help them facilitate that growth by really helping them get out of their own way and keeping them in a seat that they're the genius of, and helping them hire a system and team of professionals around them that can ultimately serve, in the worlds of like asset protection. How do we create an ecosystem where I can have arm's length separation from my assets as I build, so that no one doomsday event can take me down? I want to be able to build healthily and scale healthily without looking over my shoulder, thinking that, someone might sue me because there's a gap in my client contract, or I don't have the right insurance policy, et cetera. On the tax side, huge gap where a lot of people are just leaving a ton of money off the table by not properly taking advantage of tax planning. And every dollar, like I say all the time, it's not about what we save in taxes. It's about what we do with what we save in taxes. If we attach those tax savings to our bottom line to a specific outcome, now I can grow significantly quicker, and I'm aware to those opportunities because my consciousness is thinking about it. Then where I see that people go wrong the most is they don't have a balance sheet in alignment with the vision of where they want to go. So somebody comes to me, let's say they're making $5 million of revenue. They tell me they want to get to 50 million and exit, maybe have a sale to private equity or something like that. We do an audit of their balance sheet. There's, every dollar they make goes into crypto or the stock market or a 401k, et cetera. Nothing wrong with any of those individual investments. But you as a growing business owner, the way that you're going to grow and take a quantum leap to that next level is by buying market share inside of your industry and vertically integrating and making those plays. So I need liquidity. I need to make sure that everything that I have is in alignment with where I want to go, because that is my play. That's my retirement plan. If you're doing otherwise, then you're not actually in alignment with that vision. So let's make sure that we create a solution around keeping the money liquid, performing, and then going to redeploy it when my business, when my competitors aren't taking advantage and they are, the unoptimized balance sheet, they're going to eventually go out of business due to, poor market conditions or not being prepared. I can buy their book of business at a massive discount, buy their infrastructure at a discount, and get the talent at a discount at the same time when it comes to employees. So that's a huge piece of us helping them, redeploy back into their best rate of return, which is them. As an entrepreneur, you are your best rate of return. So I want to invest in the S and me, not the S&P. And then on the back end, whatever exit looks like in anyone's world. So if you want to just hand this down to your kids, on the estate planning succession side, or if we're building a $50 million enterprise, how do I actually extract $50 million out of this company and land the plane softly on the tax side as well? That's kind of a little bit of what we do.
Love it. Love it. And you had me at stupid tax, by the way. The moment you mentioned that, and I think it's for any entrepreneur listening, what I love about what you shared is that you've just given us about a 3-minute blueprint of like, hey, here's a quick sort of 101 insight of just, if you're not thinking about these 3 or 4 things, now might be a great time for you to start thinking about them. But with you writing a book in the process of, and acknowledging something like a stupid tax, I think, one, that term just immediately resonated with me in so many wonderfully humbling ways when I think about my life and my business up to this point. But two, my question that comes with that is that when you think about everything that we spoke through the first 25 minutes or so about this need for personal investment, this need for prioritizing oneself, how important is it to be working with someone who is in fact comfortable with themselves before you start throwing out things that may in fact make them realize that they're a little stupid in terms of maybe some of the decisions they may have made?
Sure. Yeah, great question. And that's why I think it's important to, as you're continuing to build out that team, to interview pretty extensively on it if this person's actually in alignment, and have they been there, and are they actually confident in what they're saying? Because for example, like perfect example is like, I personally would not hire a fat personal trainer. They aren't where I want to be. So it's that same exact example. Or is this person actually embodying where I want to go? Have they been there? Have they consulted people on that back end? So that's where my head goes when it comes to potentially taking on a service provider, et cetera. I'm sorry if I missed your question there, but what was the specific question?
No. Just more so like how you get somebody comfortable, enough to be able to have some of these discussions around maybe some stupid decisions they've made if they've not maybe made some of this investment in themselves to begin with, to just simply be comfortable with themselves.
Yeah, great question. So that's why I focus so much on my personal development, so that I can then translate that to clients. And I'm a matter of fact, as you can probably tell, I don't really pause before I speak. I speak really fast. The passion just comes out, and you can tell from the passion that it's for the greater good. So I'm not intentionally trying to put you down, but there is a point where you might want to have your feathers ruffled a little bit, because it's going to wake you up. And it's going to force you to get uncomfortable, which ultimately allows you to feel comfortable in that space. And so I'm all about vulnerability. And so for me, when I'm consulting my clients, or if I'm going through a due diligence process to potentially take on a client, I'm extremely vulnerable about myself, which provides a comfortable environment to share about uncomfortable topics such as taxes and money, because a lot of people don't want to address the stupid taxes they pay because there's shame involved.
Sure.
And part of what we do, which is intangible, is letting them know that it's going to be okay. Yeah. And I've had 3 conversations today of people, and this is not a testament to me. This is just a testament of just really trying to care about people. But 3 people specifically today that have been prospects going through our process have said, "Hey man, like, you've been a breath of fresh air. Like, you let me know that it's okay." Like that things, because when you're so close to the quote unquote problem in your business, you're just in this echo chamber, and like, you don't know how to get out of it. And when you have someone that's consulted tons of businesses at multiple different stages, letting you know that like, hey, like, I've seen this before. It's not as bad as you actually think it is. Like, it's going to be okay. And we have a plan mapped out for it. It makes you feel significantly more confident to share and get vulnerable, because ultimately that's where growth happens.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you took us there, because that ability to even recognize that stupid, however you want to put it, it's not an offensive word. It's not an attack or anything like that. It's just a way of sort of acknowledging like, hey, it's a blind spot. It's a blind spot. It's something you missed. And down the road, hopefully we'll look back and we'll laugh at it, and we'll see it as a realization and an opportunity for where we are now, having recognized that point much earlier on in this journey than had we not had this conversation. And you speak to discomfort as well. And that is such a huge undertone theme of everything we discussed through the front 20-25 minutes of the episode. Is everything that we discussed was laced with a desire and a willingness to get uncomfortable, and just practicing discomfort positions someone to come to someone like you and just have an uncomfortable conversation. If you're not practicing what it means to be uncomfortable on a day-to-day basis by challenging yourself and investing in yourself, good luck having uncomfortable conversations around your business without taking it personally and then becoming this person who's actually getting in their own way and preventing your business from seeing the potential that's capable of seeing.
And that's why I purposely use the word stupid tax, because it could come as a triggering word for people. Sure. And if they personally feel attacked by that, because I know my intentions and I'm never trying to personally attack anyone, right, then I know that they probably need to work on more mindset before we start to work together, or I know where I need to lead the conversation. And so it's a great indicator by using a quote unquote provocative term to see how somebody responds to it and see if they're willing to rise up to the occasion, or they're going to, cower to stay the same. Because then I'm going to also save my time as a service provider by knowing what type of client am I working with, and is this person in alignment with where we need to go?
No doubt. And Antonio, this has been phenomenal. And I have one more question really to ask you here before I let you share more about everything and anything we can stand to know about what you're doing and where we can find you. But, you're clearly a competitor. You're someone who's pushed themselves their entire life to do what it is you're now doing today, and to have gotten to where you are. I'm just curious. I do like to ask this question from time to time when it makes sense, but when you look at a day now and you put your head on the pillow and you decide, hey, was today in the win column or was it in the loss column? What puts a day in the win column today for you?
What puts a day in the win column for me? That's such a good question. I think my mind works in check boxes, and I've learned over the years to bring intention to those check boxes. Mm-hmm. So I know if I check the boxes off with a full heart, with true intention, by bringing my best authentic self and doing it in service to God. For me, that's my belief. I'm never going to push that on anyone, but that is my belief that we have a creator. And so with that, if I can continue to ultimately serve that kingdom, that I can rest my head on the pillow knowing that I gave it my all. And ultimately, if that's how you define success, you're going to have a lot more wins than losses, because the money will come, all those things will come because it's virtually guaranteed. Where I struggle is playing in the world that, like, the infinite games that don't have a finite ending. But I've developed a curiosity to truly learn about how to master that world. And so if I could get one step closer to mastery every day, that's what helps me feel like I'm winning for sure.
That's great. Checking boxes with intention and fulfillment. That's a solid way to assess a successful day for sure. Brother, let me hand it over to you to land the plane. I'll use that term that you used earlier, to land the plane softly now for us, by just sharing where we can find out more about yourself, the business, all the things.
Well, before that, kudos to you, man. You're a great interviewer, and it's been a blessing to have you on our podcast as well, and to create a relationship with you, and just be able to be in service and be affiliated with someone of your caliber has been a blessing. So thank you for that and the platform. For anyone that wants to connect, I'm very active on Instagram. It's Antonio Vaglica Jr. If you want to link that there. I don't have anyone that answers my DMs. I answer them all personally. That'll always be a thing, because I don't like the off-putting that comes with people. Nothing wrong with doing that as your sales engine, but for me, sometimes when you have somebody that's delegated to that, it doesn't come off as authentic, and I truly believe that. So with that, very responsive on things like Instagram. If you want to connect on the business realm, anyone that comes from Coach Steve's ecosystem, and sorry, are you cool with me calling you Coach Steve?
I'm absolutely fine. People have been calling me for a long time, so it's all good.
So anyone affiliated within your ecosystem, I am more than happy to have a chat around your business. And just the way that we run our business is we don't have a sales presentation or anything like that. We do a due diligence process to see if it makes sense for the mutual benefit of each other. We give everything away for free and sell the implementation. So the way that I do business is we have like 3 or 4 calls before it makes sense for us to actually go on for an engagement. And we go through a process of saying, here's where you're telling me you are. Here's where I think where you want to be. Here's the strategies on how to get there in every single silo that I had, mentioned before. Mm-hmm. If you want to go do it on your own, great. Most people don't have the time, knowledge, or desire to actually get it done themselves. So then they hire us. That's how we do business. Right. So I'm more than happy to shed a light on any of that for anyone in your ecosystem. So yeah, probably the easiest way to connect.
Beautiful. Well, you just heard that, folks. If you're looking for 30, 45-minute virtual coffee with Antonio sometime, you have a free one whenever you would like it. I think you have to pay for the coffee, though. So that's the only thing that you're going to have to cover. But hey, brother, listen, I appreciate the kind words. More importantly, I appreciate your insight, your generosity of it at that. And best of luck with anything. I don't think you need it. You're well on your way, and good things are only coming your way, no doubt. But best of luck with anything and everything in your world, brother.
I appreciate you, sir. Have a great day.
And my thanks again to Antonio for joining us on this episode of Career Competitor. And Something I wanted to just share as we finish up here is the importance of just making notes whenever we screw up. Deposits, that stupid tax that Antonio alluded to there that I couldn't help but gravitate towards because I myself have certainly accumulated a fair share of stupid tax over the years. But the stupidest thing that we can do is ignore it, right? The stupidest thing we can do is just act like it never happened, because we need to learn from those lessons. And if there's anything from this episode I think I will personally take, it is that of the insights from Antonio, the vulnerability and transparency he was willing to share around some of the tough lessons that life has taught him because of mistakes that he has made. But the fact that he has taken those very mistakes and used them as the lessons that they were in order to build what it is he has built for himself and will continue to build for himself moving forward. So really want to encourage you maybe just to take stock here in closing. Where in your world have you made some mistakes that maybe you've not acknowledged as the clear mistakes that they were, the lessons that they could be, and the way in which you could potentially now use those very same steps moving forwards to encourage you not to make the same mistake again. So my appreciation one last time to Antonio for joining us, and as always, my appreciation to you for listening. Thank you so much. And the show continues to grow. You'll see if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts that we now currently rank in that top 50, sometimes even higher than that, in the self-improvement category around the world. And that's because of you, the listener, taking the time to continue to come back. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe to the show, especially if this is your first time listening. But if you are a regular listener, take the time to share this episode with one or two folks within your world. Continue to build the community that is Career Competitor. And I look forward to doing all of this with you again very soon. Bye for now.